Hi, soul friends. It's Tannaz Hosseinpour, and welcome back to another episode of the Minutes on Growth podcast. Today's a special day. I am here with Christian Ray Flores, and honestly, I don't even know where to begin because his life reads like a novel. So, as a child refugee in Chile, raised across Africa, Russia, beyond, his journey has taken him from standing outside a concentration camp as a child to becoming a pop star whose music helped shape political history in Russia to now serving as a US-based entrepreneur, philanthropist, performance coach. He's also the author of the little book of Big Reasons to Love America, and he's co-founded a media company, and he just brings both wisdom and warmth to every space he enters. So today we're going to be diving into a lot of topics: faith, identity, radical invention, reinvention, and spiritual practices that keep us grounded when the world gets loud. So, Christian, thank you for being here. And we're so excited to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Tanaz. I'm excited to I'm excited to join. I think you have a very special presence. I can just already feel it right now. So I
Thank
can see why people love your podcast.
thank you. So let's dive right in. You opened your book with such an incredibly vivid memory. So, like holding your mom's hand outside the concentration camp as she passed food to your imprisoned father. How did that early moment shape your understanding of love, of sacrifice, and of freedom?
Well, it's at the time I was very young. I think all I could feel is fear and an extreme uncertainty. It's for a 5-year-old to not know where's dad, why is he dad, why is he in this pl place guarded by soldiers? Is going to make it out. It's a lot, and I think eventually, sort of the layers that you speak of, they sort of came over time, and it was a lot of sort of these deeper realizations about justice or about human cruelty or about causes that are worth dying for and laying down your life. And those sort of ideas landed on my heart, on my mind, earlier than they land on normal sort of lives. Because for me, I was just maybe seven, then eight, then nine, and I saw people who went through this stuff, and I would hear the stories. I would be immersed in stories, and it sort of laid this foundation for me where I sort of became very sort of unusually driven by cause. You know, and sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing because you're too much attached to causes and too little to other things.
So powerful. I'm just imagining that 5-year-old. How did that fear and that uncertainty feel in your body?
No, I remember just being disoriented, I guess, just scared and disoriented. And when you're five, you understand maybe like 10% of what's going on, but you almost just capture the energy of it, right? There's fear in the air almost. I could feel it in my mom. I could feel it even in the streets because there was sort of chaos in general. There was a lot going on. And then we ended up in a refugee facility. So that unsettled feeling of, wow, there's like several families per room. We're sleeping on these cots and we can't leave. There's soldiers outside, things like that. So it's really more of a composite feeling rather than sort of an understanding.
Wow, I can't even imagine what you must have gone through. I'm curious, at what age did you start to cultivate a sense of safety again?
I don't think I was. It's really interesting. I think my sense of safety never left because my sense of safety came from my family. Wherever my family was, we were fine. And my dad and my mom were very present. My sister, we spent a lot of time together. And I was very lucky, I think, that way. I think the sense of uncertain that life is uncertain and can change in any minute. Yeah, that came, that came, that came very quickly, and it helped me build certain character, like just character traits that ended up really helping me in life.
I'm curious, like what?
Well, at some point, especially if you took, okay, I'm going to take a step back. Think about this, right? So I go from Chile to Germany to Russia to Africa,
Hmm.
all by age 7, 3 continents, 4 countries.
Hmm.
I'm just disoriented. And there was a military coup in Chile. I saw civil war in Africa, and then by the time I was a teenager, but before I was 20, I saw tanks in the streets of Moscow. And that's like a fifth move, basically, back to Russia after my parents' divorce. So what happens is when you are almost like this sort of grabbed from one environment and put in another over and over and over again, you you know nothing is certain. But then on the upside, I think, and it's a mystery to me exactly how it happened. But I became convinced that if nothing is certain, then everything is possible. And that's sort of where I landed. And it just gave me this, you know, very strange capacity to try new things, right? So, which is the entrepreneurial spirit. It comes from that. So for me, it was just shaped out of a sense of a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change all the time.
Wow, that is so profound. So this idea that nothing is guaranteed for tomorrow kind of gave you the courage to pursue whatever it is that you desired in the present.
Yeah, and I think, now that I coach people, I see how what a disadvantage sometimes is a sort of a sheltered, peaceful, harmonious life in your early youth. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a disadvantage because you're used to certainty, right? And sometimes you get addicted to certainty, especially if you live in the United States, one of the richest places on earth. You never go hungry. You're never worried about, losing your life or anything like that. I mean, most people lead a very, very prosperous life. The downside of that is that you get so used to it that when you want to start something new and things don't go your way, right? The uncertainty kicks in. You can be a wreck, basically, right? So, one of the sort of counterintuitive ways to really explore success in the, sort of the deepest sense is to divorce yourself from certainty. And I would even say to divorce yourself of the illusion of certainty,
Mm.
because certainty is an illusion. Nothing is really guaranteed in this life. So when you don't have that illusion of certainty, you become much more open to new experiences, to failure, to experimentation, things like that. It's a great quality to develop in yourself, and anybody can cultivate that.
That is such a powerful reframe. And I think this whole um, all that you shared is like the definition from victim to victor, like that shift of taking
Yeah,
life
yeah,
circumstances
yeah,
and shifting the narrative that you have about it, right? Someone could have had that same experience and taken on the label of I'm such a victim of life. And
yeah.
you
Uh-huh.
took that and you said, wow, if anything, it gave me an advantage to experience life fuller with less resistance to fear because tomorrow isn't guaranteed.
Yeah, and you're a psychotherapist. You'll appreciate that. I was talking to an expert in sort of growth mindset,
Mhm.
and this expert he told me, there's a term actually for that, and it's called transfer,
Mhm.
and it's basically taking an experience, a negative or hard experience, an obstacle that you had in your childhood, or in your youth, and then really feeling it deeply, but then understanding that something came out of it that empowered you, gave you some muscle, some clarity, perhaps some wisdom, et cetera, right? And that's called transfer. So, and you can take that, and then it serves you for the rest of your life. You can have one negative experience or three negative experiences, but you can transfer from that, this reframe, as you call it, and you can have incredible fruit long term into the future, right? Over and over again.
I love that. And also this concept of we're seeing in literature post-traumatic growth.
Growth, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like how we can grow from these challenges, and you are living
Yeah.
experience of that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wow, that
And the
is
cool thing is that you don't have to go through the drama I went through.
Mhm.
You can actually train yourself for that just in real life now. And to me, that's the most exciting part, right? So you can learn how to have post-traumatic growth by creating sort of, I would say, a level of trauma every day, every week in your life. That is soft trauma, right? It's just a little bit of hardship.
Mhm.
And you can literally create another term for post-traumatic growth is anti-fragility, right?
Mhm.
That's the term I use, is that you create enough obstacles and challenges for yourself every day, and your ability to grow accelerates at an incredible level, and it doesn't go away. It's just one of the things that I just love teaching people how to do.
Love that. There's this story that I heard at a Tony Robbins seminar, and he was sharing how Sarah Blakely, who owned spandex, turned into a billion-dollar company. She was sharing that when she was a child, her father was a lawyer, and every time that she would come home from school, he would ask her, "What's one thing you failed at?" So she would be consciously throughout the day looking for opportunities to like fail so that she could learn from it. And it's such similar to what you're saying of like
Exactly. Yeah.
creating, because then nothing can beat you, put you
That's
down.
exactly it. And that's why when I go on these podcasts, like we're talking today, obviously the story is fascinating, right?
Mhm.
It's crazy. It really is. But what I don't want people to think is, wow, this is a inspiring story. Look at him. He overcame and survived, whatever, right? What I want people to take from it is, no, 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 this applies to you right now, today. You can learn from it and transpose that into your life, and you can build an incredible trajectory of growth and an ability to withstand the inevitable hardship that is involved with building anything new, right? You want to build a new chapter in your life, a new future. You want to write a book, change careers, start something new, do something incredibly creative or risky. You are literally building hardship into your daily life, increase hardship, right? And basically, the trick is how do you do that very consciously, just like what you mentioned with the founder of Spandex, where you go, yeah, I'm actually totally okay with failing every single day, as long as it doesn't kill me, it actually grows me a little bit.
I love that, especially because sometimes there's this narrative of like when you're starting something new, like a business, if there's resistance, it means it's not meant to be. Like we've like, oh, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's society saying that the easy way is the right way. And like the flow, we talk about like it needs to flow. And exactly as you said, there is going to be added hardship because it's something outside of your comfort zone, something you've never done before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's probably more primal than even society or culture, right? I think the cultural part in my mind is if you live in a prosperous place, right? If you have the good life, there's a saying that,
Mhm.
a good life creates weak people.
Mhm.
Weak people create hard life. The hard life creates strong people, and then the strong people create a good life, and that's basically the cycle, right? And it's surprisingly evident everywhere. Like for example, if you have somebody extremely successful, professionally, financially, their children tend to be weaker
Mhm.
if they're not brought up with enough hardship in their life, and then the cycle continues. So their life becomes harder because they just have less capabilities, right? So I think in that sense, c- culture in the first world is a softening culture, right? So you know, we just don't, we're not. We might have financial issues and worries and anxieties, all kinds of anxieties, just like everybody else, but we're going to eat, we're going to have a roof over our head. I mean, our unemployment level is what, 4%. Basically, if you're willing to work, you can make money. Compared to many other places where there's a life and death kind of situation, there's just such volatility, instability, lack of opportunity. So I think from that standpoint, our culture softens people. So if you're an American, if you live in the first world in the West, you must then do something very intentionally to harden yourself, not to be callous. I mean, hardened, able to do more things, right? Grow more muscle. But that needs to be intentional because your environment won't do that for you. You have to do it for yourself, and then maybe hang out with people that do who do the same thing. But on a deeper level, I think it's that instinct of avoiding suffering is just a primal thing. So our amygdala tries to scream bloody murder and danger, even if you're like trying to write a song, or publish a newsletter, like the emotions associated with that are so disproportional to the actual risk being taken that just learning how to overcome that, it's not that hard.
Wow. Wow. Can we talk about faith, the role faith played in your healing, it's in your purpose,
Yeah.
in your journey? Yeah.
Well, I actually I have an unusual story for especially for America because I grew up atheist. My parents were Marxist. I literally haven't did not meet anyone or know somebody who believed in God until I was probably in my late teens or early 20s. So I grew up in this very spiritual vacuum, in a spiritual vacuum, and faith came in. I started really going into New Age in college because I just had this just deep, I don't know, this deep dissatisfaction with my worldview till then. I'm like, there's got to be more to life than just the physical reality, right? So, and I had a friend who was actually Chilean, and he started introducing me to some new age concepts, and I got really excited, got start reading about it. And then, I did that for maybe 2, 3 years. It really didn't change my life. It was very intellectually stimulating, but it didn't change anything in my life, in sort of in my character, in my trajectory. And then I became a pop star right out of college. All of my friends were going to into commerce and banking because I was a economics major, and I went into music because I had some skills in that area, and I just had a feeling I think I got the goods. I'm gonna give it a try. I can live in a shoebox, eat. I think we ate like falafels every day with this friend of mine who were like renting a this little apartment and making music together. And then it just took off. I was just very lucky, and we worked super hard, obviously. And when you go from nobody, and sort of even almost like less than a nobody in the sense that, in Russia at the time, everybody's white, right? Very few people of color. I have brown skin. I look foreign, although I speak perfect, impeccable Russian. So I look Latin, right? My dad's Chilean, and so when I was there, I definitely felt like a minority, right? Like even in high school, you can see like there was this one girl who I dated in high school, and the other girls were like, "Why are you dating this, dark boy, whatever?" Like there was this mild racism or something like that. It's just really cultural. It was very homogenous. It wasn't racism. I think people were just not didn't see people like me
Yeah.
in their midst. So you grow up a little bit at with a heightened sense of disadvantage, right? In that sense, and then you go from that to playing in front of 10,000 people, so being on television and radio and people asking for autographs and traveling around across 15 different countries and touring different languages, and everybody knows your songs. So that really plays a trick on you, on your self-esteem. It's just very confusing, abnormal, I would say. So all of my character traits became very revealed, and yeah, I had all kinds of issues, friendship, money, dealing with business stuff. I mean, I was just so messed up, right? And I didn't become messed up because of fame. I think it just became self-evident because of the heightened attention, and the stakes were higher. So I became very depressed, and I became very depressed right around the time I had a number one hit. Like I had a string of hits, and then I had this massive hit. It was everywhere. And somebody invited me to a Christian church, and I begrudgingly went because I was just so humbled by that time. I had broken up with a girlfriend broke up with me, but before breaking up with me, she had a baby, and we had a baby, and I was just confused and heartbroken, and she actually cut me off because I was so mean to her. and I was just a wreck. And somebody invited me to a church, and I said yes. And I just met a guy who was a Canadian missionary there, and he had just this presence about him, the way he was around his family, his friends, the way the sense of a missional life he had that appealed to me because I'm very cause driven. I mean, I was sort of around that, just not in religious spaces. And that's how I became a Christian, very quickly. And it changed everything for me. And now in hindsight, I think this. I think true success in life, true flourishing can only be spiritual. It is a deeply spiritual thing. I don't think you can be successful in life if you're not a spiritual person because you're a spiritual being, right? You ignore that part of yourself. I think success could be very shallow or perhaps, not multidimensional. Does that make sense?
I mean, that makes the most sense to me. I
Yeah, yeah.
love it. I think for me as well, spirituality grounds me. It brings me on this physical realm. It allows me to have this internal feeling of um, just a safety. For me, it's safety. It's synonymous with safety.
Is it? Okay, interesting. And what does that mean? Safety meaning like a piece, like a center to who you are, or is it more of a protection from things that seem, you know, contrary to what you want to live through?
I think so. For me, it's very, very similar to you in terms of growing up. Um, my dad was religious, but he never really pushed anything onto me. And my mom was always spiritual, but she never really pushed. So no one really pushed anything on anyone. And I
Right.
was in college and I was studying political science and I took one religion course so that I could get an easy A, and I ended up majoring in religion as well because I just found it so
Wow. Wow.
intellectually
Yeah.
stimulating. But similar to you, it was all intellectual until I went. For me, it was studying some of Dr. Wayne's books, and then I went into Sufism and then Kabbalah and just the spiritual realm. I went deeper and deeper into it. And what it did, it helped me, it brought me down to the sense of maybe made me more humble, more understanding, more empathetic, but also this really strong belief for me that everything comes from the light, creator, God, universe, and everything is happening for our highest good. So it, even if the outside world is shaking, it creates this internal core safety of the internal
Mm-hmm.
doesn't react to the external because
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
know
get
it's
it.
happening for me. It's not happening to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. So you're basically you feel like there's a core that is deeply rooted in truth, in a higher truth, right?
Yeah.
And that helps you navigate life. And I think for me that's it's the same. I feel like I feel the presence of God
Mhm.
and his guidance and his protection and his provision and his even chastising sometimes. Hey, I need to learn some lessons here. And also I feel sort of this privilege of reading a text that's been written by dozens of authors, across millennia
Mhm.
that has survived intact actually for thousands of years and shaped civilizations. So, fads come and go, but these profound, almost like laws, the moral laws of the universe,
Mhm.
they don't leave. So if I root myself in things that have always been true, always will be true, my life becomes much easier, much easier to navigate. Certain things never change, right?
Mhm.
Love, hate, greed, sex, parenting, marriage, friendship, power, all of these sort of archetypal dimensions of humanity, they don't change. So if you become a student of these things, you have this unfair advantage, right?
Mhm.
If you ignore those things, it's like ignoring gravity. Why would you ignore gravity? You can. you're not going to really do well in life if you ignore the, a very real thing that is gravity. But I think the moral law of the universe, people tend to feel like they can ignore those things, and they do, but we do, but really to our peril.
Mhm. And there's a lot of literature now also on faith and mental health and how and any form of faith, as long as there's faith present, can help people navigate life with a little bit more grace and a little bit more ease. I was actually in Southeast Asia for a couple of months doing research on this. And again, various, like in Japan, we have Shintoism and Buddhism and wide range of different religious and spiritual modalities, but it shows that when that is embedded into our daily life, into our rituals, like in Japan, I was so amazed that in the morning they would wake up, wear their suit, go to a Shinto shrine, then go to work, and they would be at work for so many hours. But this, even though they were constantly in the state of doing, and
Hmm.
they're so busy, they have like long hours, your nervous system will feel the calmest when you're there. It's like that internal grounded energy that, again, faith is playing such a big role into their life, kind of like setting them up for the day, grounding them. So there is a lot of research and on
There
that.
is, yeah. Oh, that's objectively true. I mean,
Hmm.
it's research that is completely secular,
Hmm.
and people go, yeah, what are the top factors for success and happiness? Faith,
Hmm.
loving family, deep friendships, meaningful work.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the stuff. That's the good stuff. You learn those things, everything else becomes easier in life.
So powerful. So I'm curious, what are some of the spiritual, religious, spiritual, or grounding practices that you personally like to rely on and do when the noise of the world gets loud, or even when like self-doubt creeps in as an entrepreneur?
Uh, and it creeps in every day. Okay. That's just, it's just how it works. If you're on the edge, if you're on the front lines of things, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the battle I mean, I was walking today, in the morning. I woke up a bit anxious for no good reason, honestly, but something, right? There's just always a little something going on. And I went for a long walk. I prayed daily. What I do, and actually I train people, I coach people in this. I my my first hour, I call it first hour, right? Your first hour will define and set the tone for the rest of your day. So if you can win the day, you can win in life. That's basically the idea, right? And it's incredible how often we ignore that one piece. And you can spend the day basically anxious in a state of survival mode, right? Your mind is different, your energy is different. You miss opportunities that you otherwise would notice. You don't take action that otherwise you would take, et cetera, et cetera. So, what we do is I do journaling, prayer, contemplation first. Then I work out. So I physical. It's either walking or weights, and that actually activates a whole array of your pharmacy, basically internal pharmacy kicks in, and you get antidepressants, you get the hope molecule, you get all kinds of good stuff, right? And then I also do learning in the morning. So there's always something that I want to expand into or learn or feel like maybe inadequate or fearful of an area. And it could be anything. It could be finance, business, marketing, hiring, firing, content creation, personal brand development. I can go on and on and on, right? Whatever it is, whatever the lowest hanging fruit, the biggest need is. I lean into that, but I basically coach people to lean into one thing until you feel a certain level of mastery, and then you can move on to the next thing. But that needs to be every day, right? So the combination of physical activity, contemplative practices, and learning, that's the core of my morning routine.
So mind, body, soul, a very integrative
Very
approach.
integrated, and every single day, no exceptions.
Mm. So I'm curious, like, as you're coaching clients and even with your own experience, okay, when people, like, when you notice that people have this desire to live a purpose-driven life, but they're kind of like self-sabotaging or they're standing in their own way. What do you
Hmm.
feel is that like big mindset block for them? Like why do you think people struggle with leaning into their purpose and having that purpose-driven life? And how can we dismantle that mindset block?
I think it's always fear, really. It's
Mhm.
the thing that stops us every time. It's all kinds of fear, but it's really fundamentally, it is fear. And even if you go deeper, it's not just fear, it's not just fear of failure, it's actually fear of rejection.
Mhm.
Because we're deeply tribal. That's how we're wired. And basically, there's this irrational side of us that goes, okay, when they find out that I'm actually an imposter and a loser, that I never really, I was never really meant to do dot 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 or be dot dot dot. Everybody's gonna find out, and my friends are not gonna like me anymore. My kids are not gonna respect me. My spouse is gonna leave me, and I'm gonna die under a bridge alone. That's like the fear. It's very primal. Of course, it's completely irrational and it's not true, right? And and so understanding that, I call it, actually, I don't know who came up with it. I think it was Stephen Pressfield. Resistance. The term resistance is the one that I use with my friends and my clients, and with my wife. It's this, when you want to lean forward, there's always a force that will push back. So it's both psychological, it's biological as well. I think your amygdala will play a role in that, but it's also spiritual, right? So resistance is the term that I use, and it's basically the term is like a catch-all to describe when you want to start something new, when you want to open a new chapter or improve, you can become faster, more flexible, smarter, start a business, write a book, create a new project, build a relationship, build a marriage, parent a teenager. When you want to move forward, there will always be a force that opposes that, and you can feel it. It's so strong, and it's sometimes fairly mystical. Like, the people that I work with, I go, hey, you need to buckle up because we're going to start moving forward fairly consistently. And because we're moving forward, you're going to feel resistance. I don't know exactly how it's going to show up, but I guarantee you it's going to show up. And it always does. It always does.
Wow. So kind of s- being honest with yourself of what to expect
Yeah.
and preparing yourself, mind, body, soul, with like the routine that you mentioned and just that awareness of, hey, this is going to show up. It doesn't mean that I'm not meant to do this. It just
Yes,
means that I
exactly. It's
kind of have
actually
to
means
push
that
forward.
you are meant to do this.
Mm,
Often, I mean, you can talk to many, especially artists. Many will tell you, if I feel afraid of something, it means that I'm supposed to be doing it, you know, because it means it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a, there is that fear of that you're not gonna be able to do it. And that's the sure sign that you need to go do it. That's resistance, right? And you either believe resistance or you acknowledge resistance and you move on, right? And I mean, that's the hardest thing. That's what I would say most people cave to that. And what I love doing is when we have our group coaching cohorts, I love cohorts because when you want to move faster and go higher, there's nothing better than having people who are doing the exact same thing around you to speak to on a regular basis. And when that happens, you can see people show up sometimes like, man, that was a hard week, or I'm having a terrible day. And then at the end of the hour, they're just reinvigorated,
mhm,
right? Their focus is sharp. They want to move through resistance while acknowledging it. And then you do it over and over again, and you actually get real good at it. What happens in the beginning is that people just are not used to it. You remember how I said, like a good life creates weak people, right? So
mhm.
you stay in the status quo long enough, you won't have the ability to withstand opposition. You just won't. So you have to question the status quo and push it, and you'll feel the resistance. So now you have to figure out how to navigate that without caving and losing your mind. But once you do that over and over again, you become really good at building a new future. Really good.
Yeah, because you're building resilience, right? You become
Yeah.
resilient. Wow.
Hmm. You become better. You become anti-fragile.
Wow, that is such a powerful reframe, and I love that so much. And it's a topic that my fiance and I have often of I always share with him. I'm like, thank God I went through so many life quakes when I was younger, because this doesn't phase me. Like these things that are coming up now, they don't phase me. I've gone through worse and
Yeah,
I've come out of it like better, wiser, stronger. And it's that's my personal perspective, but when you go through it at a younger age, I think it's easier than going through it like when you like being kept safe until like your 40s and then suddenly you realize life's challenges. I think it's
hmm
harder for those
it
who
is
get it
harder.
later
Yeah,
in life.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's harder for, look, if you're a parent right now listening to me, do not hover over your kids and protect them from everything. You can't. It's good. It's our role to protect our kids, obviously, right? But participation prizes, for example, bad idea, right? You get a prize when you win something, when you accomplish, when you overcame, when you compete. Exposure to the different areas of life. My kids were with me on mission trips and inner city projects that we've worked on in here in America. Um, the the favelas in Brazil, in places like that, the slums of Maputo, Mexico City, places that are with extreme poverty and extreme challenges. And my kids were exposed to that, as well as the beautiful places, Paris and Mexico City and São Paulo, places like that. So, you know, if you want to be a great parent, show them the full spectrum of life, right? And they will show up unfazed, courageous. When people speak about this sort of generational fragility of generation, whatever the next generation is, right? Uh, I don't agree with that. I don't think so. So I mean, there might be a trend somewhere in there, but it really depends on what the family was like, what the parenting was like. Um, so there's no reason for you to go, oh yeah, everybody that age is going to be this way. No, no, that's not true.
And, I think what people kind of confuse, and I know we're going on a completely different tangent, but this concept of gentle parenting with protecting your child from everything. I think there's so much beauty in gentle parenting. We're stepping away from like beating your kid up, like those type of harsh punishments that were normalized in the past versus kind of
Yeah,
trying to protect your child from everything, which exactly as you said, it's not possible. And, I was just sharing with my mom the other day, I was like, in grade seven, I was sharing an experience that had come up for me during somatic experiencing training. I was like, wow, like this memory from grade seven came up. And she was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, 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 please don't apologize. Like, that's not your fault. Like, it happened in school. Um, and like, you learn, you grow, and you couldn't have protected me from everything. Like, it's just impossible.
it is. Yeah. I mean, life is hard. Life is messy. People can be mean. We hurt people. People hurt us.
Yeah.
That's just reality. And like if you think your kids are gonna escape from that or somehow be immune, no way, right? Now, obviously, protect your kids.
Hmm.
Like if it's danger, absolutely. But if you basically, you know, hover over them, that's not gonna help them. You're gonna create weak people,
Yeah.
and weak people create bad times, basically. So, you know,
Yeah.
I have all of my three daughters have three daughters. They're all out of the house, right? And literally all three of them are amazing. They've all come through really hard times, actually, in every single situation. But I think they were just exposed to enough of reality of life that they got stronger, they navigated through it. They're just extraordinary women, extraordinary young ladies, right? Unbelievable. And then at the same time, I definitely know of many kids their age who just can barely function, right? Why?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time it's because they were not exposed to reality, to truth, to sort of the a worldview that is really more that it's true, right? You can't You can't protect people from truth.
Hmm.
Even one of the archetypal stories of Buddhism was, Buddha was a prince,
Yeah.
Siddhartha. And Siddhartha was a prince whose parents decided that he would not see or
Hmm.
experience or know anybody, uh, no disease, no old age, no poverty. He was completely isolated from those things. And eventually, and inevitably, he saw.
Yeah.
And when he saw it, he couldn't go back. He had to go and explore what that is, right? So it's
Yeah.
an archetypal story, right? And it's true of everybody.
Mm. So powerful. One last question. I know we're coming towards the end of our time together, but I want to talk about identity because you've navigated like being being a refugee and being an artist, being a non-believer, being a believer, being an academic, being an entrepreneur. So, what advice would you have for listeners who feel unsure about who they really are?
Oh, that's a big question. I would say this is really the ultimate meaning of life, in my opinion, is finding who you really are and knowing that you have an assignment that was meant just for you of the role you will play in this world. That is quite literally the most important thing you can do and the thing that will make you happiest. But pursuing it is a scary thing, right? So we settle into mediocrity, we settle into doing sort of average things in average places with average people because it's a paycheck. We settle. We know deep in our soul that's not how we were supposed to spend 8 hours a day every single day of our lives, the most creative hours of our lives. So I would suggest whatever it takes, okay? Go to a church, find a mentor, hire a coach, get into masterminds, pursue why you're here. And then while you find it, do it with all your heart. Don't settle for the mediocre. Don't settle for the middle. Everybody aims for the middle because of fear. And the middle, because of that, is crowded. But you must aim high because I do not believe there's anyone on this planet who is meant to be mediocre. You know, you are meant to be the one version of you that is completely irreplaceable in the human race. And what is that exactly? It's a scary question. It's a scary quest. But I will never rest. I will always pursue sort of the closest version I can find of that
Mhm.
for this year, next year, next decade, and I will pursue it relentlessly. And I've done it for a long time, and it's the happiest of lives. It's not the most peaceful of lives, perhaps, right? But it's the happiest of lives because you're driven by so much purpose. And because you're driven by purpose, you will do things. You're not going to do things half-heartedly. You will become very, very good at, you know, doing the assignment that you've been given.
That is so beautiful. And it brought up another question because, you're embodying that purpose-driven life, okay? In the different capacities, the different hats that you're wearing. So whether it's, as an entrepreneur, whether, it's as a coach, whether it's as someone doing missionary work. So my question is our purpose a career or is it more of an embodiment, um, a service, a sharing that you can mold into different careers? Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
think
The
so.
question.
I think it's that. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's who you are, your personal assignment, right? Who you're meant to be. And then that gets invested in a career.
Mm.
And then actually your seasons change as well. So like I've changed 5 different careers over my life. This is my, and I don't mind it for a couple of reasons. One is I don't think you're meant to do one thing all the time and that's it, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily. Now, if you choose to do that, that's totally fine. But if you also meander a little bit in the search for the best sort of the best description, the best place for your assignment, you actually broaden your baseline of wisdom and skill set, you
Mm.
know? So so there's who wrote this book? I don't remember. There's a book called Why Generalists Sort of Rule the World or something like that. I don't remember. But basically the idea is this, is that if you can become a specialist in sort of the old school, maybe like 80s and 90s view of a career is you become a narrow specialist and that's how you win.
Mhm.
Well, the downside of that is that that narrowness is also a limitation, right? You might not find solutions, capabilities, or innovation that can only come from a broader, more creative
Mhm.
worldview. Now, but if you do a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and then you start seeing in between disciplines and start seeing commonalities and patterns, that's true mastery. So in the long run, in the short run, when you sort of meander a little bit, you can you might be at a disadvantage from a specialist, right? I
Mhm.
do just computer coding of this particular kind. That's it, right? Um, but in the long run, you probably will have an unfair advantage over the specialist because you can combine disciplines in different ways and have insights that other people may not have because they just don't have your experience. So in that sense, I would say, it sort of ties perfectly into this idea of finding your purpose in your assignment, is because no one on the planet had your experience,
Yeah.
Tanaz, right? You are uniquely qualified to solve certain specific problems just because of unique experience. And trusting that and sort of mining for that, like you mine for treasure, right? Like you dig for treasure and then seeing, okay, I have this set of on the surface disconnected patterns of my life and experiences and passions and even fears and obsessions and having sort of this sense of just trusting that all of that is not by chance
Mhm.
and exploring how do these pieces go together so that I can serve humanity. What kind of problems can I solve in a way that no other human on the planet can? And I know that it sometimes sounds something like that sounds a bit poetic, a little, maybe new agey. I really think that's actually profoundly true. And it just really depends on how serious you are about understanding that you have a purpose that is really a higher purpose, right? And then you can do the hard work of collecting the mosaic in a particular way that becomes just unique. I believe that is really the ultimate joy in life is to embrace that. And it's really hard and painful because, it's a thin line between going, okay, I'm going for unique, but I'm actually feeling like I'm weird. I don't belong. Story of my life, right? I don't belong pretty much anywhere.
Wow. And we all yearn for belonging, right?
Yeah, we do. So I think again, what that's the reframing piece, right? I can choose to say I've never fit anywhere. Like I'm not local anywhere. It's just ridiculous. And you can just stay there, or you can go, yeah, but I know so many worlds. I
Mm.
can navigate, I can go in between worlds. Culture, language, creativity, business, finance, music, philanthropy, compassion, spirituality. I have a unique combination. My only thing is to how do I put it together for the service of somebody, not just to sort of tell stories. What kind of unique problems can I solve that way? And I think everybody has that, right? And sometimes when people speak to me, they go, "Oh, my life is so boring compared to you." I really don't believe that's true. Yeah, I'm a little exotic, but I promise you don't want to be me. Okay, there's a lot of downsides to that, you know. So I think everybody is exotic. Everybody is absolutely unique.
Yeah.
And finding that uniqueness and bringing it to the surface with such faith and care and gratitude, is really the ultimate joy in life, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for in your work day to day creating that space for people to feel safe, to explore their inner world, to find the magic within their lives and to bring it to the surface, to embody it, to live it, to pursue it. Which kind of brings me to my last question of how can people connect with you? How can they know more about your coaching services and all your other projects?
Thank you for asking. So, I would like to offer to your audience a gift. One of the tools that I use in my coaching is this multidimensional sort of scoring system that is essentially based on a lot of research and personal experience. And it's called the Exponential Scorecard. I use it with my clients, but I give it away for free. You can get it if you go to exponential.life. Exponential is spelled without the E, starts with an X. And it's like 40 questions, take about maybe 5 to 8 minutes, depending on how quickly you answer the questions. But it gives you this very crisp picture of your strengths, your weaknesses, what you need to work on. And it's on the surface, it's almost deceptively simple, right?
Mhm.
But I can promise you this because I use it all the time. I can predict so clearly if you're gonna do really well, you know, even if you feel you're not doing well, but you will do well, and I will know just out of looking at your graph, at your scorecard. Or maybe you feel very sure of yourself, and then your scorecard will tell me that your trouble is just around the corner for you, and I can tell you that, very clearly, very, very accurately. So when people fill it out, they can get a report. Sometimes they, if there's time, if I have a slot, you can even press a button and schedule a call where I can actually go through the score with you. And so that's a really cool exercise to do. And on the website, you'll see also what we do when it comes to coaching. The other place where I highly recommend you go is my newsletter. The
Mhm.
URL is christianrayflores.com, and it's Christian Ray Flores, just my name.com. And it's a newsletter that drops on Wednesdays and Sundays. And I basically explore tactics, strategies, insights into success and significance. And it's perfect for people who want both, right? These are ambitious people, people who are up to stuff, but they want deep significance, deep purpose attached to their success. And it's really good stuff. I invest a lot in that newsletter.
Yeah, I was going through it. I was like, wow, it's like long and filled with so much wisdom. So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that with the world. And of course, I'm going to drop those links in the show notes. It's been honestly so amazing, Christian, having this conversation with you. We've talked about so many topics that a lot of people try to stay away from because it's like, I don't know, sometimes people don't want to have those hard conversations. So thank you
yeah.
for having them and for sharing your wisdom and your insights, and for doing the work that you do and for really being an embodiment of that which you are
Mm.
talking about and teaching. It's been an
Yeah.
honor.
Thank you, Tannaz. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the great questions as well.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon.